Welcome to the lecture number 21 of the course Linguistics 2 English 504. Now, as we can see, we are talking about, your first slide talks about the review of lecture number 20. Now, we were talking about stylistics, and we looked at some of the definitions of stylistics, the concepts of stylistics, and we talked about the merits and demerits of them. Now, today we're going to move ahead with the definitions, move ahead with the concepts, new concepts that we got about stylistics. But first, let's look at what we did in the last class. We saw that a comparison of each text by the same or by different authors in the same or in different genres. We started with talking about what is stylistics. We defined stylistics, and we saw that stylistics is basically, it's a comparison. You can compare two different texts. You can compare the two different texts in the same genre. You can compare two different texts in the different genres. You can talk about the style of a writer in two different genres. You can talk about the style of the writer in one genre using two different texts. So it's a comparison of each text by the same or by the different authors in the same or in different genres. Now, technically speaking, stylistics is a study of linguistic features of a literary text. They could be phonological, lexical, syntactical. So we take each levels of language and we talk about the styles, we talk about the linguistic devices, we talk about the literary devices being used at different levels, and how the sounds are altered, how the words are altered, how the choice is made between words, and in order to create impact or in order to emphasize on certain aspects. Now, merits and demerits of some definitions. We saw that there were 6 different kinds of concepts, 6 different kinds of definitions, 6 different kinds of aspects from which we can talk about stylistics. And then we talked about the merits and demerits of these definitions. Style as an embellishment. This was the first concept that we talked about. We saw that style, basically stylistics means, this definition, the first definition basically says that styles means embellishment, just an ornamentation, decoration, the flowery language that the literary writers used in order to express their thoughts. And according to this concept, it meant that language could be separated from the thought, and stylistics is just about the decoration of thoughts, using decorative language, using ornamental using language. It's in beautifying a thought, or using a decorative or flowery language. But in fact, then we discussed that the thought cannot be separated from the language, because the different writers, they convey different thoughts in different languages, or in different thoughts in different expressions. So they would go for different devices in order to convey different expressions. So it was very difficult to separate language from the thought, and this definition says that it's just like outer core, outer covering, which can be separated from the inner core of thought, whereas that's not the actual case. You cannot separate thought from the outer core, the thought from the outer covering or outer shell of beautiful language. Now, style as a choice. Now, this was the second point which we discussed, style as a choice between alternate expressions. That style means you can just make a choice between words. You can just replace word with other words. But then we saw that sometimes you change a word, the meaning goes wrong. Like we had that example of to eat means to eat loves the child. That is wrong. To eat loves the child. Now, the father loves the child, or the mother loves the child, and when you replace father or mother with another word, like for example, to eat. Now, to eat loves a child, that is a meaningless sentence. So basically, it's not only about making a choice. Choice has to be defined. Choice has to be clearly distinguishable, and you must define what choice to make. because you can't just replace the words with any words. The word has to be replaced in the same category. That is how you can create a change of style. That is how you can change the expression. That is how you can change the thought even. So it's not only about changing thought. Now, moving on to the third concept today, we see that style as a set of individual or collected characteristics. We're going to discuss 3 and 4 together. 3 is the style as a set of individual characteristics, and the 4th is the style of collected characteristics. So what happens here? The emphasis on individual element of style is quite important. It must be allowed in all kind of linguistic studies. The emphasis on individual element of style is very important. You emphasize the individual characteristics of a writer, the individual characteristics of the style of a writer, and the individual qualities of a style of the writer. Now, almost all writers, they have their individuality. They have their individual identity, they have their individual styles, they have their individual techniques to change their thoughts, to communicate their thoughts. The readers, they become very familiar with the writer, because the readers who are very familiar with some of the writers, they would immediately identify the writers. They would immediately know who the writer is from the writing. Like people who have read some poets more, like for example people who have read Keats or Shelley, and they can identify easily from the verses. They can identify that this is the style of Keats or this is the style of Shelley. Or people who know how Shakespeare uses language in the plays, and people who have read all the many plays of Shakespeare, or people who have watched movies of Shakespeare, they know the style, that specific style of Shakespeare, which is not with the other. Sometimes it's not with the other playwrights. So people can really identify, the readers can identify easily the writers from the language, because the language becomes identified, the language becomes specific with that writer. So every writer has got a specific style. Even in Urdu poetry, when you have heard so many verses of different poets, or you have read so many poets, from the very verse you can identify, yes, this is Faiz, or this is Iqbal, or this is Ghalib. So from the verses, from the devices, from the specific vocabulary of the poets or the writers or the prose writers, you can identify. The readers, they become very familiar with the writings, and they can identify the style of the writers from the verses, from the prose, from the short stories, from the linguistic devices being used by the poets or the writers. So this is very particular, for very specific for different writers. Now, sometimes the problem arises when sometimes it can be done objectively by statistical counts. Sometimes it becomes difficult. Now we'll see later how it becomes difficult to identify the writers. But here, another technique to read them, another technique to identify the style is by counting having the statistical counts of frequencies of linguistic features. Now this is very objective technique. This is a technical or scientific technique that sometimes you identify the writers by counting, having the statistical counts of the frequencies of linguistic features. How many times a writer has used a certain word? How many times a writer has used a certain technique? So by counting in a certain text, you take a text and you start looking at it, and you see, you count the number of times the word has been used, a number of times a certain technique has been used, then you can really make a data. From that data bank, it can be a statistical table, it can be a statistical analysis. From that statistical counts, you can identify that this is a certain writer, or this is the technique of the writer, or this is the style of the writer. Still it becomes difficult. Now we talk about the difficulty. Sometimes it's really difficult to do even like that. It becomes difficult to identify style with individual expressions. How? First, some features taken as stylistics are as not individual. They may not be individual. Now sometimes in a text, you have some features which are identified with the general expressions, some features which are there in the general writing as well. So they are found in others as well. Like different poets, they sometimes use the same technique. When such an incident arises, when in such a case, it becomes difficult to identify a writer, it becomes difficult to tag a certain style with a certain writer, because there are techniques, many poets or many writers, they use the same technique sometimes, and it becomes difficult when you are comparing, especially you are comparing the two poets, or you are putting the two poets together, or the two writers' writings together. There, when you even look at the statistical counts or even use the quantitative technique, even then it becomes difficult to compare, difficult to tag a certain style with a writer, because the two writers are using the same techniques. So it becomes difficult to identify. Third, how can we separate the unique and inimitable features of a given style from all the other features necessarily present in the text we are studying? Now here again another problem arises, that when sometimes we are analyzing a text, we see some of the features really specific, some of the features specific for a certain writer, for the writer, the different, when you are comparing different, especially when you are comparing the two writers, you have some techniques which are common, but some of the devices are generally used. And even if you are looking at just one text and trying to analyze the style of the writer, it becomes difficult to identify those techniques, it becomes difficult to differentiate between those techniques which could be used by by that writer and the general techniques or the general features present in the text. So it's really difficult sometimes to differentiate between the general features which may be present in the text and the specific features being used by that writer. So, and we may mix up the general features. We may tag those features, associate those features with that writer, which may not be used by that writer. So here the difficulty arises in identifying the features of that very writer and to really be accurately talk about the style of that writer. Accuracy becomes difficult because there could be some other features as well in the text which were not used by that writer. Now individual modes of expression form a category too special to give us a general basis for an ideally powerful style definition. Now individual modes of expression, they form a category too special to give us a general basis for an ideally powerful style definition. We can't give a proper definition here because there is amalgamation, there is a mixture of features in a text. Individual modes of expression, they form a special category, and that is a very special category which belongs to that writer, right? It's a category too special to give us general basis. It doesn't talk about the general basis. We can't talk about the general basis, which is difficult to differentiate between that very special category and the category of the general features present in a text. So we can't really form a proper definition of stylistics. We can't give a proper definition looking at this aspect that individual style is the stylistic, or stylistics means the individual style of the writers. It's difficult because you may have general features as well. The identification of style within the individual elements of language presupposes the setting up of norms of comparison. You can't really set up the norms of comparison here. You can't really compare the two kinds of categories. The identification style is to be if you identify a certain style of identification of style with the individual elements of language. If you take individual elements of language and you form up a style, then it's too special. It's too special to decide about talk about the general features. So it presupposes the setting up of norms. You set up norms, and then there's a deviation from the norms. When there's a deviation from the norms, it becomes difficult to form up a definition, a proper definition. Definition of style as a set of individual features, characteristics is unsatisfactory. It's difficult to form up a perfect definition of the of style or definition of stylistics when you are all talking about the individual features of a writer. So it fails to pinpoint the expressive characteristics which are clearly indicative of the style. You can't really talk about the expressive characteristics or the special features. It fails to pinpoint the special features which are indicative of style, because there are general features as well present in a text. When you have general features and specific features together, it becomes difficult to pick up the individual features and form up a definition. It's difficult to identify the special features, identify the special features of the writer to make up a proper definition. So the definition is not satisfactory, because some of the features present, the general features present in the text, which may not have come from the writer, they also pollute this definition. They also enter this definition. They also enter the features which are identified with the writer. So here we see the next concept, the style as a deviation from a norm. Now, how the norms are formed, and how when you talk about a certain style, we say that that it's deviated the norm, or it is away from the norms, or it is different, talking differently as it is discussed in the norms. Style, this concept says as what is style? Style is basically a deviation from the norm. Norm means that regular features being used, or the regular pattern of language, and when somebody deviates from it, moves away from it, then that forms a style of that person. So such definition could be useful only if we could define both the norm and the deviations in the concrete and operational terms. No, we can't really define the proper norm. We can't, because norms even change with situations, norms change with societies, norms change with the era, norms change sometimes with the writers. So norms are flexible, and even the deviations are flexible. So if you really define proper norm, what is norm in concrete form, and you define that this is the deviation, this is the change from the norm, this is the deviation from the norm. So what is norm? That has to be defined. What is the regular feature? It has to be defined. And what is the irregular feature, or where you see the deviation, what kind of deviation it is, and you have to talk about it in concrete form. Why there is a change, and in what shape you see a change in the language, and how you have formed the style of that writer. So since the norms can't be defined and the deviations can't be defined in concrete form, so this is a demerit of this definition, demerit of this concept that style, what is style? Style is basically a deviation from the norm. It's a demerit. It falls short here of the requirement of the proper definition of stylistics, because norms are flexible, norms vary, and also the deviations vary. Some poets might show some other deviations, one kind of deviations, and some writers might show some other kinds of deviations. So they might have deviated in order to express a different thought. So they deviate depending on the expressions, depending on their thoughts, depending on the ideas. So they might be flexible, they might show a different deviation. So since deviations can't be defined in a proper concrete form for all the kinds of writings, or for all the kinds of writers, so it's difficult to really give a proper definition related to norms, that style is a deviation from norm. It's not only a deviation from the norm, because norms change and deviations also change. Now such definitions fail to establish a precise relationship between text and the norm. So this is what it is, that the precise relationship between the deviation and the norm is difficult, because the deviation may show a different kind of relationship in case of one writer, and it may show a different kind of relation in case of another writer writing, because they may the relationship might have been used in a different way. The deviation might have occurred because of a different norm. In case of different writers, they would establish their own relationships between norms and the deviations. They might deviate from a norm which is not present in that in that very style. So norms and deviations, they can't be really identified, they can't be really tagged together, because they are likely to change. A precise relationship, you can't establish a precise relationship between a text and a norm. The question how norm-defining features are different from general features of style still unanswered. How they are different? Norm-defining features, the features which define norm, and the features which define general features of style. It's difficult to establish the relationship. The question is still unanswered. How norm-defining features are different from the general features of style. Norm-defining features and general features, they have two different categories, and it's difficult to see the relationship. It's difficult to define the relationship or the difference, to see the difference between the two kinds of features, because they are put together. You might find them together in certain texts, so you can't really identify them, you can't really separate them, single them out, the stylistic features or the norm defining features, you can't single them out, because they are so much used with relation to each other that it becomes difficult to identify both of them separately. Norm-defining features may be stated in terms of meter. See here the technical devices like heroic couplets, time, Elizabethan style, place, yank humor, some of the examples of certain texts, some of the examples where you find the norm-defining features, language, dialect, writer's Shakespearean style, the literary work, like the Byronic style, you talk about certain style associated with Lord Byron. So these are different examples where you find the norm-defining features. They define the norms that were being used in that era, the norms that were being used in that time of the society, like the couplets, Elizabethan style, place, Cuban language, dialect, right, or the Shakespearean style was associated with Shakespeare. So the norms were there, and according to the norms, the features were there. So these were basically called the norm-defining features. Now, school of writers like metaphysical, romantic, you have some more examples of the norm-defining features: genre, poetic style, journalism, social situation. Then you have some social situations here, like a brigadier addressing to a brigade, or a principal speaking to his students, and so forth. So here you have a mixture of features. Somewhere you have specific features related to general writing, but again you have some specific features which relate with certain norms of that society, norms of that period of society. So all such norms to be roughly circumscribed by context, including time, place, and situation. See, norms change with situations, norms change with writers, norms change with time, right? Historical developments have brought different norms, have brought different features. So there's an influence of socio-economic, socio-political conditions on the writings of writers. So norms of society, they change, the traditions change, the culture changes. So this way you have different styles of writings, and sometimes the general writings, they mix up with the specific writings, and you see the features being put together. Like you have, some of them are very technical, some of them are coming from literature, but then you have some others which are a result of general writings or the general speaking, like you see a brigadier talking to brigade, or you see principal speaking to students. So there you have different features, and the principal sometimes even may mix up some of the features which are norm defining, or some of the features which are coming from the literary writings. So there's so much mixing up that it's very difficult to identify the norm defining features and the general features. So all such norms seem to be roughly circumscribed by context. They depend on context, they depend on different ways the writers use techniques, different ways the writers, they change the words, they change the sentences, they change the linguistic devices according to the context, according to the time, according to the place and situations. The writers, they vary. The writers vary their writings. The writers change their writings. They develop their writings according to the situation, according to the context. Now, moving on, we see that it becomes evident that it's difficult to separate style from context. It's difficult to separate style from context. Style depends on context. Style may change from the change with the context. Style may be linked with the context. In one context, you have one style of expression. The same writer in another context will go for a different style. So you see different style of writers sometimes in different contexts. So you can't really identify, you can't really tag a style perfectly for all situations with any writer. No way to know what an accepted norm is. You can't decide about the norm. You can't really distinguish a particular norm in any society, because from the writings, sometimes the norms are not really clearly identifiable, they're clearly visible from the writings, because you have some of the features which are norm defining, but some general features as well which are not present in those norms, which are not present in that society. They may have come from the writer himself, and they may have come from the society. So the norms are difficult to distinguish. They are, if you say the definition stylistics is just deviation from norm, that's wrong, because we are not clear about norms, and we are also not clear about the language. We are also not clear about the deviations. Style as a set of those relations among linguistic entities that are stable in terms of wider spans of text than the sentence. So they are, here we see a new concept. What is style? It's basically style, it's a basically set of those relations among the linguistic entities. You have different entities, linguistic entities, and there's a relationship among them that is called style. That is what this definition focuses on, that the entities which are stable in terms of wider spans of text than the sentence. So when you see a difference between one sentence and a text, some of the features are identical, some of the features are stable. You always find them in the larger text. In a sentence, it's difficult to identify that feature. It may not be present in another sentence. So from a sentence, it's difficult to identify a particular style. From a larger text, it's easy. What is style? Basically, style talks about those features which are stable, which are always present in long text. But here you have to consider only the long text. Here you have to consider only the spans of text, the wider spans of text than a sentence. The bigger text, you have to take only those bigger texts, and then you can identify the style. From a sentence, it's difficult to identify them, because the features would not be present, may not be present in all the sentences, but the features would be present in a longer text, and those features you can find in so many other long texts, and that is how you can identify the style of a writer. Now here Professor Hale's definition is very important. What does he say? Professor Hale has defined stylistics as concerning all those relations among linguistic entities which are stable, or maybe stable in terms of wider spans of than those within the limits of sentence. So the limits, within the limits, the features may not be as stable as they are stable in wider spans of text or the longer text. Now here this definition also falls short. This definition too is really inadequate. How? It neither confines with the view of style as choice or as tabulation of alternatives, nor rules out the study of frequencies and probabilities on style determination. What does this mean? It neither conflicts with a view of style as choice or as tabulation of alternatives. Now, it doesn't conflict, it's not against the view that means that style is a choice or as tabulation of alternatives, or the alternatives, words or the alternatives have been used, and how many alternatives, the frequency, how many times a certain word has been changed, or how many times a certain word has been replaced, nor rules out the study of frequencies and probabilities on style determination. And it also doesn't exclude the study of frequencies and probabilities on style determination. So it also talks about the frequencies and probabilities. It doesn't rule out the study of frequencies. So study of frequencies and probabilities that give us the style, that talks about the style determination, that how to, a writer, how many times a writer has used a certain word in a certain text or in a certain sentence. So here, what is the problem? The problem is that even a single sentence has some style. You can't ignore that. Even a single sentence possesses style, and one cannot write a single sentence without style. You write any sentence, it's got a style. It would talk about how the features have been used. It would talk about the different features or the different way words have been arranged. So the concept of spans not so much stylistic as grammatical. The concept of spans is not really very stable, because it's not so much stylistics. You can't really decide exactly the style that is identical in a span or identical in a text, but here the more importance is of the grammatical, that grammatically it has been composed more. It is, when you see a text, you talk more about the grammatical features rather than the stylistic features, because they may not be stable, because even one sentence has a style. Alright, moving on to the next slide. What do we have? Linguistic approach to style. How does linguistic talk about style? What is linguistics way of dealing with style? Style in literature is a recognizable but elusive phenomena. You can't really be clear about this phenomena. You can recognize, but again you have some doubts, you have some ambiguities. Now, part of the difficulty in discussing style is because of temptation to attempt simultaneous answers to linguistic, pragmatic and aesthetic. Now, what is this difficulty? Why is it difficult to discuss style in literature? Because you are at the same time talking about different levels. You have a temptation to attempt different answers. You are also looking at linguistic aspects, you're looking at pragmatic aspects, and you're also looking at aesthetic aspects. How the writer has used language, how the writer has used different words, replaced different words, and how the writer has used the aesthetic aspect. What did the writer have in his or her mind from the aesthetic point of view? So you're basically talking about different levels, you're talking about different aspects. You're talking about language, at the same time you're talking about the words and the thoughts or the speech acts. You're also talking about the aesthetic aspects. So that is why it becomes difficult sometimes to talk about style from the talk about style of people, style of writers, when you're looking at the literary pieces. Now, you are basically looking at, simultaneously looking at what? I would like to repeat this point. You are attempting simultaneous answers to linguistics, pragmatics and aesthetic questions concerned with different levels and attitudes to the communication process. You are looking at different levels, and at the same time you're trying to answer different questions related to different aspects. That is why it sometimes becomes difficult to give answers to the questions of style. Now, present-day linguists, what they've done, in their narrow, rigorous sense, they only focus on the linguistic features present in the given text and on the analysis of their distribution and frequencies. So they are looking only at the given text. Present-day linguists, what are they doing? They are looking at only the text present, the given text. They are focusing only on the given text. Although it's a narrow, rigorous approach, but still you are not confused and you are very clear about a certain style when you concentrate only on the given text. So, but a poem, a novel or an essay is more than style. Now look here. Here again you have a problem that you are looking at a poem, for example, or a novel or an essay. You can't say that the whole style is present and you can analyze the whole essay just from the stylistic point of view. You can't say that you can analyze an essay, or you can look at essay just from stylistic point of view. Stylistics is just a part of the whole thing. It is just a partial approach. It is just a part of the whole impact of the essay or whole impact of a novel or a poem. Its style is just a part. It's not the whole thing. It may have different features. You may talk from the point of view of the thought, how the thought has developed. You may talk just from the language point of view, how the language has been used. So technically, if we just see the poem or a novel just from general point of view, we may talk about the plot, or we may talk about the development of the story, or we may talk about the development of thought. But when moving into technical domain, then we have to go for different techniques, how linguistics techniques have been used, how the writer has created an emphasis, how the writer has created a musical element using different techniques or different linguistic devices, metaphors, similes. So basically, style is just a part of the whole thing. You can't really talk in complete. If you talk about style, you are not talking completely about a work. You are talking just partially. You are talking about an aspect of the whole thing. Any satisfactory stylistic analysis would be a combination of all the 6 approaches. See, the 6 approaches we studied before. What is stylistics? Any definition, stylistic analysis, that would be a combination of all the 6 approaches. So you can't really define any piece. You can't analyze any piece, or you can't give the critical analysis of any piece of writing just from one approach, just from the point of view of decoration, for example. You can't say that this poem has all the decorative features or the embellishment. You can't talk just from the embellishment of view, or you can't talk just about the choice of words. So when it's a combination of all the approaches, then you are basically giving the whole idea about a poem or a whole idea about the literary work. So any satisfactory stylistic analysis, it would be a complete analysis, a satisfactory analysis, when you include all these 6 approaches, when you include all these 6 approaches or all these 6 aspects we just discussed in that analysis. Then you are basically making sense and you are talking in complete terms about any literary work. And a revision of the 6 approaches. What were the 6 approaches we were just talking about? As embellishment, as a choice between alternate expressions, style as a set of individual characteristics, style as a deviation from the norm, style as a set of collective characteristics, and style as a set of those relations among linguistic entities that are stable in terms of wider spans of text. Or then in a sentence, the final thing we discussed, that every sentence has a text. You can't really single out a sentence, or you can't talk about style in terms of just a longer text. So when your analysis has all these 6 things, when your analysis has a mention of the decorative terms, mention of the linguistic devices which beautify the text, when your analysis talks about the choice of alternate expressions, how the writer has sometimes made a choice between words, changing the words, and the choice has been defined. When your analysis has the mention of individual features of that writer or individual techniques identified with that writer, and when your analysis talks about the deviation from norm, that here the writer has deviated from such and such norm, and when your analysis talks about the set of collective characteristics, the collective characteristics of the era maybe, the collective characteristics of that school of thought maybe, then you are talking about the collective impact of the text or the collective features which have entered that very text. Style as a set of those relations, and when you also talk about the relations among linguistic entities which are stable and in terms of wider spans of text which are stable, when you see a longer text you see that these qualities, you mention that these qualities are stable, and when you're comparing the two texts you say that these qualities are also present in another text in this context, so then only your analysis can be called complete. Your critical analysis would be complete only when you include all these 6 features. You don't talk just about the style, you don't talk just about the beautification, you don't talk just about the choice of words, but you include all these features in that definition. You include all those features in your critical analysis. Only then your critical analysis can be called a complete analysis of any literary work. A definition of style should have observational, explanatory and predictive adequacy. Inadequate, if you are not talking about these 3 things, your appreciation, your analysis is inadequate. You have inadequately mentioned the techniques if you haven't included the observational, explanatory and predictive adequacy. Any definition of style, when you define stylistics or style, should talk about observational. It should be talk about what is what you have observed, or what features are observable, and it should be explanatory. You explain all the features and also predict what are the why the features have been used, or what is the thought of the writer. Only then you feel that you can claim the definition of style to be complete. It should account for all choices like paradigmatic, grammatical, stylistics, should make inventory of style markers, stylistical natural markers, stylistical features, characteristics, should state the contextual spread of the style markers. Now here some of the things which should be present in an ideal definitions. We see these things slowly and we see them clearly, we see them individually, what they mean. Paradigmatic features, grammatical, it should be talk about the grammatical structures, should talk about the stylistical choices, structures, should make inventory of style markers, should talk about the different kinds of style markers, a list of style markers, stylistic features, characteristics, should state the contextual spread of style markers, how the different style markers have been spread in a certain context, in what context they have been used, and where they have been used in the text, and how many times they have been used. Special stylistical markers, they indicate what and in what context they have been used. And your proper definition should also account for overlapping of stylistic sets already established by study of the other text. Now here you are talking about the comparison between the two different texts or different. Now what is overlapping? Which features are overlapping? This means that which features are common to the two writers, are common with to the two texts, which features you can identify. So this means what similarities are there between the two writers or between the two kinds of writings, what is overlapping, what is common to both the writers or writings. Shift of style or contextual transfer, how the style has been shifted, how the contextual aspect has been changed, or how the contextual transfer, you mean that the context has been changed, and how the linguistic technique has changed with the context, or how the style has changed with the context, how why the style has changed with the context to focus on a different thing. So when the writers, they change, sometimes they need to focus on a different thing. So that is why they basically change the style just for a different thought, just for a different context. Like we saw that the writer may sound one way in comical writing, and he may sound differently in tragic writing. So the writers have different style in different kinds of writing. So this is what is meant by the contextual transfer. Your ideal definition should also keep in mind distinction between style and dialect. What is a style and what is a dialect? A writer may develop a style and keep it separately from dialect. Or some writers, they have a style in which they more use of dialect. They use the language which is associated with dialect of a particular society or a particular class of society. So the definition should be clear in talking about this is style and talking about the dialect. So the definition should be very clear, or it should give us clearly what is the difference, that here this is the style of the writer and these words are basically dialect. So dialect or the style of the writer has been influenced by dialect. So this, because sometimes you talk about certain things which may have come from the dialect, which may not be identified with the writer, may not be related to the writer. So it should keep a difference between a dialect and the proper the technique or the style of the writer. Should be able to study a text micro stylistically and macro stylistically. So talking about a text using all the 6 concepts, and talking about the text from inner aspects and from the outer aspects, talking about the core of the text, the basic core, the thought, the basic idea of the writer, and talking from the aspects of the outer shell, the language which has been used to talk about that concept. That is stylistics. Stylistics talks about text not only micro stylistically, the inner things, but also macro, the general things, and also then not only the inner core or the idea, but also the outer shell. Style is the aggregate of frequencies because it is the result of more than one linguistic items. Style doesn't talk about one particular linguistic items. It is a collection of all the techniques that a writer uses. It's the collection of all the linguistic items that have put in that text. So this is not this is not restricted to one particular aspect. That is what we mean by saying that includes all these 6 different aspects. It talks from all these 6 different aspects just to give a whole impact of the whole impact of a passage. It doesn't talk from one aspect, because then you leave the other aspects. You are basically creating a vacuum, and your definition won't be complete according to the requirements. For example, we see example here. For example, a given word in a text acquires stylistic significance by juxtaposition with other words. Any one word, it becomes important just by juxtaposition with other words, just with the relation, or just using it in relation to other words, or replacing it with the other words. So one word individually is nothing, but it's basically, it becomes significant, becomes important with the technique of juxtaposition with other words, replacing it with other words, or putting it in relation to other words. That is how you are creating an impact of that word, or you're making that word important. And that would even talk about the style of the writer, that the writer is, there are some writers who use some words very frequently. Some poets, they use some words very frequently. They have their vocabulary, and in that vocabulary there is an excessive use of certain words because of their themes. So different words, they can identify with those themes, and they can relate those words with those themes. So this is also a very clear way to know about the style of writer. Secondly, the study of style must not be restricted to phonological or morphological or lexical or syntactic observations. It must be built up of observations at various levels. See, it's not only the matter of phonology or morphology or lexical items or syntactical observations. It's a matter of all things together. It's a matter of collection of all things. It must be built up of observations at various levels. Every level is to be studied, and then a complete collection of ideas, a complete analysis is to be given in stylistics. You study the things, the features at every level, not only one level, but every level, and then you combine them and then give a comprehensive definition or a comprehensive concept about stylistics. Style is concerned with frequencies of linguistic items in a given context. It also talks about the frequencies, how many times certain items have been used, how frequently certain items have been used. To measure the style of the passage, frequencies of its linguistic items of different levels must be compared with the corresponding features in other contexts or corpus regarded as norm or having definite contextual relationship with this passage. See, it's also about comparison. You're taking the frequency of the linguistic items at different levels, how linguistic items have occurred at different levels, and then what are you doing? You're comparing with the features in another corpus, the features in another text, how they are used, in what context they have used, and that is how you are basically comparing through comparing you're also comparing the styles of the writers. So they are, or maybe you make a norm, a collection of norm, and you compare the features which are present in the norm. So norm, a clearly defined norm. It can't be any norm, but then the norm has to be clearly defined. So you compare the features which you see in the given text, and you compare it with the features, you compare this storehouse of features, the collection of features that you collect, that you've collected from any given text, you compare it with another features in another text or corpus. So this is how you are measuring the style of the passage, by looking at the frequency of the different linguistic features being used in texts. Regarded as a norm and having definite contextual, you take a related passage. It's basically a related passage. When you are comparing, you take another related passage and you see the features. The themes may be same, but you see that you also compare the features of the two passages. Here I have an example. For stylistic analysis of one of Pope's poems, norms with varying contextual relationship include English 18th century poetry. The corpus of Pope's work, all poems written in English in rhymed pentameter, couplets, or for greater contracts as well as comparison, the poetry of Wordsworth. Now you have different examples here. You want to study Alexander Pope's work or poem, you know about the traditions, that will give you a picture of the traditions of Pope's era. They'll give you about information about different linguistic devices, poetic devices being used in Pope's era. So this is how you identify the writer along with the period as well, along with the period of time as well. So rhymed pentameter couplets, or in greater contracts as well as comparison, the poetry of Wordsworth. You can also compare it with a poetry of Wordsworth for stylistic analysis of Pope's poem. So you are comparing the features present in two different writers by looking at two different works. Style is a link between context and linguistic form, and the style of text may be examined in relation to how you can analyze a style, how you can look at the style by impressionistically recognized norms of language use, by text with other authors recognized by reference to one as comparable, other texts by the same author recognized by reference to 1 and 2 as comparable. That's what we were talking about, that you can basically talk about the style of two authors by comparing them together, by comparing them, by looking at two texts from two different authors, text by other authors recognized with reference to 1 as comparable. You take another text of another writer and you can compare that text with the text of this writer, or you can compare the two texts of one writer and look at how the linguistic devices have been altered, how the linguistic devices have been used according to the context. This intra and extra textual study of the contextualization in the light of linguistic structure and its history that has come to be called stylistics. So we see a very good definition of stylistics, like the intra and extra textual study, not only inside but beyond that, outside. We see intra and extra textual study of contextualization in the light of linguistic structures. We look at how the linguistic structures have been used in a certain text and its history that has come to be called stylistics. How it was, when it was written, when a certain piece, a literary piece that was generated, looking at the tradition, looking at the time, looking at the devices. That is how, because it is not only from inside, it is also from outside. So that is how we form our analysis of any text. The student of style must see language and literature in relation to other functions of language, social linguistics in relation to other norms, stylistics. So what should a student of stylistics do? He should look at language and literature in relation to other functions. Because we saw a link, there is a link between language and literature. So he should study the features of language and literature in relation to what other factors, in relation to the traditions and norms of the society, in relation to other socio-linguistic factors. So it's not only studying the language from one aspect, you're studying literature and language together in relation. You should relate them with other features like even the mental phenomena. You should also relate it with the concept of the writer, the idea of the writer, and also with the idea of the society, the norms of the society, or even the stylistics, like when you are bringing statistics into it by counting the number of words or by looking at the frequency of the words being used in certain texts. You are basically doing your job very well done, because you are looking at the comprehensive way, you're looking at stylistics in a very comprehensive way. We carry on basically with this definition, and we see in relation, you must also relate it with the individual and collective characteristics inherent in the work, in the writer, in the age, period, and the literary tradition of the age. All these, they come into your study, they come into consideration when you are studying stylistics, when you are giving a comprehensive picture of stylistics. The stylistic selection should not be the choice between items that mean more or less the same. So you should have a different choice. It's not necessarily the choice between the items which are identical or which have a relationship. You should bring into picture so many other aspects as well in order to clearly define what is stylistics. Some classification of context is a prerequisite for a sound stylistic analysis. You must classify the context, must make a different categories of context, because the style may vary according to the context. It's a prerequisite to a sound stylistic analysis. First of all, you must know the context, you must know the situation, According to that situation, then you would think about the style. And you can imagine, very well imagine, what style you can link with a certain thought, or what style can be associated with a certain tradition, or a certain norm, or a certain era, or certain writer. So you first have to see the context, the actual context, and then study the language. All stylistic analysis is ultimately based on the matching of a text against a contextually related norm. So what is it? It's based on matching text against the contextually related norm. You see a combination of different things, and you call it norms. These are the society norms. So the traditions, they have a stable identity. So with those you can relate your literary pieces, relate your writings, match a text against, and you match it, and you see that does it match with the tradition, does it match with the what is happening in the society, does your text relate to that, does your text give a picture of what is around you in a society. Enquist says contextually bound linguistic items function as style markers. Style markers occurring in the same text form a stylistic set of text. When they are occurring in the same text, different stylistic markers, they tell us basically what is a stylistic set of text, what is a style of that text, and what stylistic devices have been used. If you look at these stylistic markers, how it has been marked, how different words have been used to talk about the different development, different thought, or to talk about the development of thought. A stylistic set shared by a large number of contextually related text forms a major stylistic set occurring within a major contextual range, and the text sharing the same major stylistic set in the same major set in the same major style. So it depends that what stylistic text, what text you are looking at, and how you are analyzing the style, whether you're looking at the style in a sentence or you're looking at the style in a whole passage. Set shared by a large number of contextually related text forms a major stylistic set occurring within a major contextual range. So all the identical devices coming in one category, and they are related with that very text, right? It's a large number of contextually related items, large number of devices. They form the major stylistic set within that major contextual range. Within that context, you have a large number of similar devices. Within every concept, within every context, you have a similar, identical kind of devices which have been put together. Text sharing the same major stylistic set in the same major style. Text sharing, again we have a further extension of this idea that same major stylistic set in the same major style. So when they are identical, all the identical devices put in the same set. Now, summing up, we see what we did in this stylistic section or stylistic branch of linguistics. Style as a set of individual or collected characteristics. Almost all writers have their individuality. All writers, they have a particular style. Style as deviation from a norm. These were different definitions, different concepts which we carried on with, linking them to the two concepts which we took in the last class. Style is a set of individual collected characteristics, and here we saw that almost all the writers have their individuality. You can't really you can't really have identical style, you can't really have different styles. But we saw this was wrong because so many writers, they use the same techniques sometimes to express their thoughts. So the devices can be common with two different writers. Then the next definition we saw, style as deviation from norm. We saw that this definition tells us, this concept tells us that what is style? Style is just the deviation of norm. But that is wrong, because then the norm has to be clearly defined, and the deviation also has to be clearly defined, because deviations vary, the norms even vary sometimes with the change of times. So, and also they vary with the writers, the deviations they vary with the writers, because if you want to restrict stylistics to just a change of norm, then that would be wrong, because the norms are flexible. The deviations are also flexible. They are not rigid norms. You can't expect to have rigid same norms over the period of time, and you can't expect to have the same norms with all the kinds of writings, all the genres. So norms change and deviations also change. The criteria is different. So that is why this definition also falls short. Style is not just change or deviation from a norm. No way to know what an accepted norm is, right? There's no way you can know what is an accepted norm and how it should be adhered to. Style is a set of those relations among linguistic entities. Then you're talking about these stable identities, stable entities which are present, the stable identity of any features of language. And style, what is style? It's basically a set of those relations among linguistic entities, which entities which are stable in terms of wider spans of text than a sentence. In a long text, we saw that you identify certain features, and those features, when they are stable, then you study the features present when you study the devices used or different features, stylistic features in a text, and you study the number of times certain features have been used. So then you can identify style. But that is even wrong, because spans, they are not important. Even one single sentence can have a style. It's not only that the style is present in larger text. Style can be present even in a single sentence. So it's difficult to then distinguish, and you can't restrict your definition of stylistics to just longer text. You can't analyze the text, only the longer text, and give a style of a writer. Even a sentence may have a style. Even a single sentence possesses style, and one cannot write a single sentence without style. See, even one sentence has a style. You can't really say that when it is put in a long text and only the long text has a style. Concepts of spans not so much stylistic as grammatical, because if you talk about the spans, then you talk more about grammatical organization. You talk less about the stylistical organization. So it's a long text is more of a grammatical, talks more of grammatical aspects rather than stylistic aspects. Style is the aggregate of frequencies because it is the result of more than one linguistic items. Any satisfactory stylistic analysis would be a combination of all the 6 approaches. We summed up the definitions with this point, that a satisfactory stylistic analysis, a good analysis, would have all these 6 approaches. A good analysis would not only be about decoration or maybe the choice of words, but it would have all these 6 approaches. All stylistic analysis is ultimately based on the matching of a text against a contextually related norm. So what is basically statistical analysis? You are matching a text with the contextually related norm. What is contextually related norm? The norm which is related with that text. You are matching your text with that norm. That is stylistics. So this means that even the idea of norm has to be introduced, has to be linked with the analysis of any text. Now, this was all about the basic part of stylistics, or in the first part we talked about the basic definitions which had their criticism, and in the second part we talked about how to form a perfect definition of stylistics. So, and we see that stylistics is not basically related to one aspect, it is related collectively to so many different aspects, and a good analysis would just be a combination of all these. In the next lectures we'll be talking about some of the ways to analyze text, the discourse analysis, how we talk about the analysis, and we use the analysis technique, and how we talk about the discourse, how we bring out the different features of discourse using different techniques and using critical discourse analysis. And further, we'll also talk about the change in language, how the language has changed. So until the next lecture, it is goodbye from this.